Okay, let's start again. One of the seven angels who had poured out the seven bowls came over and spoke to me. Come with me, he said, and I will show you the judgment that is going to come on the great prostitute who rules over many waters. Now, like I said before, John is going to be invited to look at this punishment of Babylon, the mother, also known as the great religious harlot, who sits on many waters. We'll discuss all those little things in a second. This is a revelation of what God plans to do with the harlot religious system. In the Bible, seas and waters represent great masses of people. They represent people, nations, and tongues. The fact that this wicked woman is pictured as sitting upon these great masses is an indication that she will be supported by them, and she will exercise control over them during the tribulation period. The church in heaven looked like a sea of glass, remember? The tribulation saints in heaven look like a sea of glass mixed with fire. Babylon the Great, the mother in other words, will sit on the masses of the world. The kings of the world have committed adultery with her, and the people who belong to this world have been made drunk by the wine of her immorality. The harlot religious system will commit adultery with the kings of the earth. She will conspire with world leaders to produce a merger of religion and government. Here it finally is, a religious system united with a political system to manipulate the people of the earth into a false government-approved religion. Now, the wine over fornication is a reference to demon possession. This wicked woman will cause people to be led astray by deceiving spirits. Some experts take a very strong stance on Revelation. This should be avoided. Some people take a very, very strong stance. Some people even say anti-Catholic. That's regardless. The one world religion will have a lot of Catholics in it, but it will also have a lot of Protestants and other religions too. The saved, regardless of religion or denomination, will be raptured, and the lost, regardless of the religious belief, will be left behind. Okay, now let's continue on with verse 3. So the angel took me into the spirit, into the wilderness. There I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast that has 7 heads and 10 horns, and blasphemies against God were written all over it. Now John was taken in the spirit to a desert, where he saw something strange, a woman sitting on a scarlet beast. Now we already know the beast with 7 heads and 10 horns, that's the Antichrist. Since this woman will be sitting on the beast, we must assume that her harlot religion and the Antichrist will exist on earth at the same time. Now, at first, the Antichrist will support her one world religion and be under her authority for a while. But things will eventually turn sour between the two. The relationship will be hindered by the woman's double identity. Remember, she is both the mother, the false religious system, and also the great city, Babylon. We see from this that all three, the false religious system, the city of Babylon, and the Antichrist, will exist during the first half of the tribulation period. The woman wore purple and scarlet clothing and beautiful jewelry made of gold and precious gems. And pearls in her hand, she held a gold goblet full of obscenities and the impurities of her immorality. Now, Psalm 22 has been called the Psalm of the Cross. Why? Because it is an accurate prophecy of the crucifixion of Christ. Psalm 22. As Jesus was hanging on the cross, he said, I am a worm. That's in verse 6 of Psalm 22. Many commentaries say the Hebrew is coccus worm. The Jews used the coccus worm to make scarlet red dye, the color of our sins. The Lord said, through your sins are like scarlet, they shall be white as snow. Though they are red like crimson, they shall be as wool. That's in Isaiah chapter 1, verse 18, by the way. Jesus was like a coccus worm on the cross because he bore our sins in his own body. The scarlet beast in verse 3, the Antichrist, and this woman dressed in purple and scarlet are full of sin. Now, obviously, it took a great number of tiny coccus worms to accumulate enough dye to make purple clothing. This made purple clothing so expensive that it was often called the color of royalty. So this woman dressed in purple, in scarlet, is a rich harlot of royal stature, if you will. Very high society. She will be adorned in the trappings of her political cronies, steadily enticing a bewildered world. Now look at the golden cup that she'll be holding. Will it be the Holy Grail? Will she take communion with it? She may want the world to think that, but she will really be holding a cup filled with abominable things and the filth of her fornication. When the false religious drink from the cup, they will drink the wine of fornication, symbolic of deceiving spirits and demons. Nowadays, many people think our modern society is too enlightened to believe in the existence of demons, right? Many, actually more conservative Christians disagree, though. Those who accept the authority of the scriptures accept the existence of demons, point blank. They do exist. They are no less dangerous than Satan, for they are his cohorts, his buddies, doing his will, in other words. All who have not accepted Christ as subject are subject to their evil influence. Now, it is unfortunate, though, but this includes many of the world religious and political leaders. Now, in the United States, the CIA has secretly used psychics, and many police departments have hired them to solve crimes. And it takes a village. Hillary Clinton wrote that she holds conversations with the deceased former First Lady, Eleanor Roosevelt. That's an It Takes a Village. Officials in China hire sorcerers to ward off diseases. Some communities in England have more Satanists than Christians, actually. Reports have persisted for years that top Russian leaders are involved in the occult as well. Satan is the unseen force behind all this. Keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. Let's go to 5. Here we go. A mysterious name was written on her forehead. It said, Babylon the Great, mother of our prostitutes and obscenities in the world. What could this mean? Now, Mystery Babylon reminds us of Jerusalem in Ezekiel's day, if you recall. Unfaithful Jerusalem was a harlot and the daughter of a harlot who committed abominations. That is in Ezekiel chapter 16, verse 35 through 36, and also the same chapter, verse 44 through 45. This harlot's title reveals where she came from and what she will do. She came from Babylon, and she will go back to Babylon during the tribulation period. She will be known as the mother of harlots and the mother of abominations. Mystery Babylon also reminds us of Babel. Remember the Tower of Babel? Now, Nimrod, who created the Tower of Babel, whose name means let us revolt, attempted to establish a one-world religion based upon astrology, sorcery, and the mysteries of legends of Semiramis and Tammuz. John seemed to be saying the root of the coming one-world religion to go back to Babylon. The heresies will be an outgrowth of that and will be shrouded in secret religious titles, and also hard to understand rituals with dark or mysterious satanic doctrines. The harlot, which is the one world religious system, originated at the Tower of Babel, which is located at the Old Testament, now what people know now as Iraq. Babylon, you can read about it if you want to. Babylon was destroyed, but it is being rebuilt along with the Tower of Babel in Iraq. Saddam Hussein tried to do that many, many, many years ago. The prostitute is going full circle. She is born in Babylon, and she'll go back there before she passes away. Let's go to verse 6. I could see that she was drunk, drunk with the blood of God's holy people, who were witnesses for Jesus. I stared at her in complete amazement. Now, the harlot will not only make others drunk, but she too will be drunk on the blood of the tribulation saints. This great religious system will be actively involved in the persecution and the destruction of God's people at that point. She will be so determined to establish her one world religion that she will actually be filled with the blood of the saints, the people that were saved at that point. Verse 7. Why are you so amazed? The angel asked. I will tell you the mystery of this woman and of the beast with 7 heads and the 10 horns on which she sits. God's angel perceived that John was astonished and maybe even confused, right? So he told John that he would explain 2 things, the mystery of the woman and the mystery of the beast with the 7 heads and 10 horns. The remaining verses of chapter 17 are about this, the meaning of the beast and the identity of the woman. We're going to get to that next. Verse 8. Here we go. The beast you saw was once alive, but is not now. And yet he will soon come up out of the bottomless pit and go to eternal destruction. And the people who belong to this world, whose names were not written in the book of life before the world was made, will be amazed at the reappearance of this beast who had passed away. Now, the beast existed before John's lifetime. Once was, did not exist when John received this revelation. Now is not, but will reappear at some unspecified time in the future. The beast will have satanic ties to the subterranean abode of demonic spirits, since he will come out of the abyss, right? He will eventually go to his destruction, since God will cast him into the lake of fire. And he will take his followers, the inhabitants of the earth, whose names have not been written in the book of life from the creation of the world, with him. When the 5th trumpet sounds, Satan will open the bottomless pit and release the demonic spirits being held there. Let's go to verse 9. This calls for a mind with understanding. The 7 heads of the beast represent the 7 hills where the woman rules. They also represent 7 kings. Now, interpreting this verse requires spiritual understanding of the scriptures, not necessarily world geography yet. Now, the 7 heads on the beast are 7 mountains on which the woman sits. This seems simple enough, right? But it's not as it appears. Revelation 17:10 tells us these 7 mountains are not 7 actual mountains, but are 7 kings. Kingdoms are actually world governments, if you will. Here lies the problem. Is this a religious system or a city that sits on 7 mountains or 7 kings? Who are they? Who are the 7 mountains or the 7 kings? If you're talking about 7 kings, nobody knows yet, because there's going to be 10 kings. Remember, 3 will be taken out and 7 will remain. So nobody really knows who the kings are yet. We talked about the other day how the world it's already being planned to be divided into 10 regions. It was a couple of days ago. The video's on YouTube now. Yes, the United Nations are planning to divide the world into 10 regions. When this will happen, who knows? A couple of years, a few years, who knows? Remember something that I told you about a week ago? That the powers that be, I'll just say it at that. The powers that be are pushing for a great reset to happen very soon. And guess what Trump just announced yesterday? Or actually yesterday. He announced that the world needs a reset. It's kind of ironic. I covered this about a week ago. And Donald Trump himself just said today that the world needs a great reset. He's going to reset everything. That's what Trump said today. Just to let you know, look at the news. Or not the news, just because the news is fake news, but just check it out. Just type in Trump and Great Reset. It'll tell you what the speech that Trump gave this morning. Things are happening, people. Things are happening as we speak. Now, going back to this, there's, like I said, a few options. If this is a religious system or a city that sits on seven mountains, we're going to talk about that in a second, or seven kings, or three, both. The Bible tells us that hills or mountains are a symbol of kingdoms. Therefore, the seven mountains must be seven kings or kingdoms. Now, still, many people believe that the seven mountains is a reference to Rome, the city on seven hills. I'm not lying. It's actually known. Rome is known as the city on seven hills. And what is in Rome? The Vatican. Now, even if right, though, this is only saying the prostitute will control and be supported by Rome. Kind of scary. Kind of scary. Verse 10. 5 kings have already fallen. The 6th now reign, and the 7th is yet to come, but his reign will be brief. The 7 heads are 7 mountains, and there is also 7 kings. The word kings can be translated into kingdoms. It makes more sense in this case to say that the 7 heads are actually 7 kingdoms because history and scripture reveal that there have been 7 Gentile world kingdoms. Now, the 5 who have fallen are the 5 Gentile world kingdoms. I'll tell you what they are: Assyria, Persian, Greek, Egyptian, and Babylonian. They existed before John's lifetime. Remember the book of Daniel? Now, one refers to the 6th kingdom, which is the Roman Empire that existed during John's lifetime, and the other has not yet come, refers to a 7th future kingdom, the revived Roman Empire, which will exist after John's lifetime. The 7th kingdom will remain. It says he must continue a short time, right? For the duration of the 7-year tribulation period. Now, let's go here. Also, a couple more points. The 7 Gentile world kingdoms are, like I covered before, the Assyrian, the Persian, Greek, Egyptian, Babylonian, Roman, and revived Roman Empire. That's from Revelation chapter 12, verse 3. The 7th future kingdom, which is a revived Roman Empire, will last for 7 years, 1 week of years, in other words, from the day the Antichrist signs a 7-year covenant to protect Israel. 7 years will be the length of the tribulation period. Let's go to 11. The scarlet beast. There's 2 answers to that question. If you recall, back in the late 80s, early 90s, Saddam Hussein tried to rebuild Babylon. But if you recall in the Old Testament, Babylon was cursed. God said that nobody will ever be able to rebuild Babylon. Saddam Hussein tried, and look what happened to Saddam Hussein. He got destroyed. So it's a good question. Now, this is where people go into the rabbit hole, and they say, well, if Babylon is basically halfway destroyed right now as of 2026. Yes, Saddam Hussein built a couple of buildings many years ago. But if you look at Google Maps right now, what Babylon looks like, it basically is destroyed. Bunch of dirt with a couple of buildings around it. And this is where people start to speculate. Is the Babylon going to be a different Babylon? Could it be? And people go all over the place, and we can be here all day and night because it's all speculation. No one knows for sure. Now, answer to your question, could be, could not be. But a lot of people think the new Babylon will be New York. People think the new Babylon will be Jerusalem. People think the new Babylon will be Rome. So some people think New Babylon will be Babylon. So who knows? Who knows? Who knows? Now let's continue here. Yeah, here we go. Okay. Now, verse 11. The beast that was and is not is actually the Antichrist. He is an 8th king, or kingdom, if you will. Is of the 7 means that he'll be one of the 7 already mentioned. Since he is yet to come, he must come out of the 7th Gentile world kingdom, which will be the revived Roman Empire. We talked about this a couple of days ago. As an eighth king, he will take over the seventh Gentile world kingdom, the Roman Empire, and establish his own brand of world government, a new world order. The Antichrist will rise to power in that government, take it over, and transform it into a satanic state. The beast that was and is not is the beast that will come out of the bottomless pit, the Antichrist. Verse 12. The 10 horns of the beast. You tell me, Patricia, that's a beautiful thing that, I mean, I told you this, I don't know, about a week ago, a few days ago, several days ago, I told you that the United Nations, uh, I've been planning that the world needs a great reset, right? This was established a couple of years ago. Um, Now, will it happen? Who knows? That's been in the back burner for 2 years, right? But as I mentioned today, Trump made a speech earlier today, or late last night, early today, that the world, that he is going to start the Great Reset himself. What that is, what it entails, nobody knows. This is where a lot of people have already been speculating. But imagine this. Imagine you owe a lot of money for your house. You owe a lot of money to credit card companies, right? You owe a lot of money for student loans and all this stuff. Imagine if somebody came to you and said, guess what? All your debt wiped out. You don't owe a single penny, but you're not going to use dollars anymore. Now we have a new currency. It's called, the whatever, whatever you want to call it. Oompa Loompa coins, whatever you want to call it. Oompa Loompa money, right? For example. And that'll be a great enticement for people. They're going to go left and right and jump over anything to get this new money, because that means that all their past debt, their mortgage, their car payments, everything is gone. They don't owe anything, but you'll have to accept this new money they're going to come up with. That is one of the main things that this Great Reset wants to accomplish. Now, does this mean that that is the mark of the beast? Not necessarily yet. Remember I told you a few days ago, in order to accept the real mark of the beast, you have to genuinely and consciously, how can I put it mildly? You have to refuse and reject Jesus Christ. Literally reject him. Some people have never accepted him. That'll be easy for them. Sure, I don't care. Sure, sign me up. Give me my new money. That'll be perfect, right? And with this new money, anybody that's had corrupt money in the past, money by laundering or money by illicit means, that money will be totally worthless. That's the whole point of the Great Reset, to make the money that we have now, whether it be pesos, dollars, yen, pounds, whatever the case may be, it's all going to be obsolete. So some people are saying, get your money out of the bank now before they do this reset, because they're trying to hack the monetary systems in the world right now. Iran is, right? Where they'll hack your banks and you can't access your money. But here's the thing. Let's say you take your money out of the bank. The dollar is going to be useless because there'll be a new money. So that's what they're trying to do, make what we have now totally useless. That's one of if you look at the United Nations website and you look at the Great Reset, that is one of the primary goals that they want. So people will no longer have dollars or pounds or pesos or yen or rupees, whatever, depending on what country you're from. That's their main goal, and it looks like it's happening sooner than later. Okay, let's continue here, please. 12. We're going on 12, yes. The 10 horns of the beast are 10 kings who have not yet risen to power. Uh-oh. Hold on a second. Let's see. They can easily control gold too. They'll tell you, okay, you can trade your gold in, or your silver, your gems, your pearls, and get this new currency. The whole point is they want to avoid any kind of value that we've had already. Anyways, let's continue here. Okay, verse 12. The 10 horns of the beast are 10 kings who have not yet risen to power. They will be appointed to the kingdoms for one brief moment to reign with the beast. Now, the 10 horns are 10 kings that will rule with the Antichrist. This presents a picture of what the end time world government will be like, right? The Antichrist will rule the world, which will be divided into 10 divisions. I mentioned this a few days ago. I even told you what the 10 divisions are, remember? In charge of each division will be a separate leader who will answer to the Antichrist. Another significant point that I have to make. The 10 kings will receive authority for 1 hour. 1 hour is a biblical term that means a short time. In this case, it means the 10 kings will reign with the Antichrist for the duration of the tribulation period only. The significance of this is the fact that Jesus promised to keep faithful believers from the hour of trial that is coming upon the world. Obviously, there will be a pre-tribulation rapture. That's the blessed hope that we hope for. The church will not be on earth during the 1 hour reign of the 10 kings with the Antichrist. That's what somebody asked me who the kings are. Nobody really knows yet. Let me make sure you guys can see this. There you go. Okay, let's go to verse 13. They will all agree to give them their power and authority. Now, the 10 rulers will be under the Antichrist. There will be nothing more than puppet kings who submit to him. Dictators usually come to power by using one or more of these tactics: violence, force, or political trickery. After coming to power, though, they usually have to continue to use force to stay in power, right? Because of that, they usually outlaw basic freedoms, such as freedom to assembly, freedom of speech, and freedom of worship. Keep that in the back of your head. According to the Bible, the Antichrist will do these things too, but he will be worse than any previous dictator. 14. All right. Let's see here. Here we go. Together they will go to war against the Lamb, but the Lamb will defeat them because he is Lord of all lords and King of all kings. And his called and chosen and faithful ones will be with him. That's a beautiful sign right there. I'll repeat this. His called and chosen and faithful ones will be with him. Now, let's read a little bit about this. At the end of the tribulation period, the Antichrist and his 10 puppet kings will make war against the Lamb and his called, chosen, and faithful followers. Unfortunately for them, the outcome was determined long ago. The Lamb will defeat them in the battle of Armageddon because he is the Lord of lords and King of kings. Only those who are called, chosen, and faithful will be with Jesus. Let's go to verse 15. Then the angel said to me, the waters where the prostitute is ruling represents masses of people of every nation and language. During the first half of the tribulation period, the Antichrist, otherwise known as the beast, will be submissive to Babylon, the mother and her false religious system, and the city and its one world government. Now, John tells us that the Antichrist and his 10 puppet kings will rise up against Babylon at the midpoint of the tribulation period. Now, the Antichrist will enter the Jewish temple in Jerusalem and declare himself to be God. Obviously, there is no more room for Babylon and her one world religion and one world government. The Antichrist cannot be God and subject to those who worship him at the same time. So someone must go. The Antichrist and his allies will destroy the harlot religious system. They will confiscate her expensive clothing, her gold and precious stones, and they will persecute and destroy her poor, deceived people. The fact that they will eat her flesh and burn her with fire is indicative of the intensity and totality of the harlot's end. Nothing will remain. Nothing will remain. Now, this wicked woman, Babylon, has two identities. In addition to being a harlot, she is also an actual city. This verse is about the destruction of the harlot. The destruction of the city will come a little bit later. Verse 17. For God has put a plan into their minds, a plan that will carry out his purposes. They will agree to give their authority to the scarlet beast, and so the words of God will be fulfilled. Okay, what could this mean? Well, this is actually a very interesting verse, people. The Antichrist does not know it, but he really is a puppet king, just like the 10 under him. God will plant the idea of destroying the false religious system into his heart and the heart of his 10 puppet kings. Destruction of the harlot religious system is the reason God will agree to give them power. They will be instruments in his hands to accomplish his purpose and fulfill his words. Now, if you recall the Old Testament, several times, the Lord used the enemy armies to destroy the people that he wanted to destroy. Let's go to 18. And this woman you saw in your vision represents the great city that rules over the kings of the world. Now, this verse identifies the woman. She is the great city that rules over the earth. Now, unfortunately, this is not really clear enough for some, what people think, even experts, because they want to spiritualize everything in Revelation. Now, depending upon who the expert is, this city could be Rome, Jerusalem, New York, the United States, part of the European group of nations, or nation in control of these nations. So who knows at that point, right? Amen. Let's go. I'm get a little recap here. No, let's go to 18. Let's just go to 18. Verse 1. After all this, I saw another angel come down from heaven with great authority, and the earth grew bright with his splendor. After witnessing the coming destruction of the one-world harlot religious system, John received a new revelation. He saw another angel coming down from heaven that will tackle the powerful and wealthy one-world political and economic system. When this angel arrives, it will not be the sun, the moon, or the stars that light the earth, but the angel's glory. This suggests that he will come directly from the presence of God. Remember when Moses came down from the mountain, he was glowing, his face was glowing? Okay, let's go to verse 2. He gave me a mighty shout. Babylon is fallen. The great city is fallen. She has become a home for demons. She is a hideout for every foul spirit, a hideout for every foul vulture, and every foul and dreadful animal. The angel will prophesy about the future of Babylon the Great. It will fall and become the dwelling place of demons. In other words, a prison for every foul spirit and a cage for every unclean and hated bird. The great and beautiful city will become dark and actually a very loathsome place. This fulfills what the Old Testament prophet said in Revelation 14, verse 8. Babylon is fallen, the great city. Now, some scholars suggest the great city described in this chapter cannot be the literal Babylon. They seem to think the current city of Babylon is too small, too remote, and more of a tourist attraction nowadays. They overlook what the Antichrist could do if several dozen nations flew in work crews and materials from around the world, 100 nations with unlimited financing, hundreds of engineers, modern equipment, and thousands of workers could turn Babylon into a great city virtually overnight if they wanted to. Verse 3. For all the nations have fallen because of the wine of her passionate immorality. The kings of the world have committed adultery with her because of her desires for extravagant luxury. The merchants of the world have grown rich. Now, this right here is a picture of government and business becoming obsessed with and controlled by a concept. Every nation on earth has delved into the idea of world government and world trade, right? All back in the day. By the time the tribulation period arrives, they will actually be obsessed, in other words, intoxicated with it, if you will. The idea will receive their full support, and the businessmen involved will become extremely wealthy. Now, many people ask what prophecy says about the United States. Some students of prophecy think the United States is mentioned in a general way, not by name, but that is mostly speculation and cannot be proved. Others think the United States will collapse or be destroyed because it is not specifically mentioned. Very good point too. But that is also impossible to prove, right? The United States would be wise to support Israel during the tribulation period. But with the church gone, it seems reasonable to conclude that it will be closely aligned with Europe and the Antichrist. We're talking about America. Let's go to verse 4. Then I heard another voice call from heaven, "Come away from her, my people. Do not take part in her sins, or you will be punished with her." A voice from heaven will urge God's people to leave Babylon for two reasons. So they will not become involved in Babylon's sin, and so they will not fall victim to the plagues God will inflict on Babylon. Now, even during this terrible time of God's wrath being poured out, it's obvious that God still cares about his people. The church has been raptured. So these are the tribulation saints, not the church, okay? But it's clear that God will have people living on earth at the close of the tribulation period. How they will survive in Babylon without taking the mark of the beast is a mystery. But they will, and some will even make it into the millennium. Let me see something. Okay, verse 5. For her sins are piled as high as heaven, and God remembers her evil deeds. Amen. In the Old Testament, God did not overlook what Babylon was doing when she tried to build a tower to heaven, the Tower of Babel. And he will not overlook this. To stop construction on the Tower of Babel, he confused their language, remember, and scattered them around the world. In the future, to stop their sins from piling any higher, he will burn her to the ground. Burn her to the ground completely. Verse 6. Due to her, as she has done to others, double her penalty for all her evil deeds. She brewed a cup of terror for others, so brewed twice as much for her. Now, life in Babylon will be kind of like a boomerang, if you will, like a boomerang. God's law of sowing and reaping will come into effect at this point. Those who offer no mercy will receive no mercy. Farmers must decide what kind of crop they want to harvest. Then they must sow the kind of seed that will produce that crop. Babylon citizens should consider how they want God to treat them, and then treat others accordingly. Someone once said, "What goes around comes around." Remember that? Now, it is predicted that in 30 years, there will be no Christians in the Palestinian-controlled area of Israel. Palestinian persecution is driving them out of the land where Christ was born. Babylon's cup will be filled with abominable things. She glorified herself and lived in luxury, so match it now with torment and sorrow. She boasted in her heart, "I'm queen on my throne. I'm no helpless widow, and I have no reason to mourn." Now the godless city will be filled with the proud and the arrogant. Her residents will declare her beauty, her greatness, her glory, and her reign over all the earth. They will think that she's a queen, right? And that she is married to the kings of the earth. As such, she is not a widow, but a wealthy queen who has nothing to mourn about. They will be self-deceived and will extol her around the world. Never mind the fact that God brought her down in one day during the reign of Belshazzar, if you recall. Now, that's Daniel chapter 5, verse 17 to 31, by the way, if you're interested. The voice from heaven will say, in the measure that she glorified herself and lived luxuriously, in the same measure, give her torment and sorrow. This will be one of God's standards of judgment Okay, over that he remembers Babylon, the great grief of the godly, will be turned into glory, and the glory of the godless will be turned into great grief. Today, many global corporations and world leaders are making decisions for the sole purpose of producing wealth. They cannot see God's love, His mercy, His grace, because they're only looking for a big return on their investments. Unfortunately, their willingly blinded, their willing blindness will not be any excuse when God decides that their sins are piled high enough. Verse 8. Therefore, these plagues will overtake her in a single day. The grave and mourning and famine. She will be completely consumed by fire, for the Lord God who judges her is mighty. Now, as a home of one world government and global trade, Babylon will think that she is powerful, right? She will control powerful weapons and great armies. But compared to the Lord God who will judge her, this touted strength will be like a dart gun to God. What no earthly army can do, God will accomplish in one day. First, the angel of death will pass over Babylon. Second, this city that just finished saying, I will not see sorrow, will grieve bitterly. Third, this rich city will suddenly run out of food. Last, it'll be burned to the ground. Now, the head of the Gentile world kingdoms in Egypt was a man called Pharaoh, remember? He dreamed about 7 fat cows with plenty to eat, followed by 7 skinny cows with very little to eat. He thought this was very significant and called in his advisors, but they could not interpret the dream. Then he called in Joseph, who told him God is letting Pharaoh know that Egypt will go through 7 years of good harvest with plenty to eat, followed by 7 years of poor harvest with very little to eat. Pharaoh believed Joseph. He built storehouses for food and located them in areas where the food could be easily distributed. The preparations actually paid off, right? 7 years of tremendous harvest came followed by 7 years of worldwide famine, with Egypt being severely affected, but the nations handled it well. That was in Genesis chapter 41. Now, after moving to the promised land, Abraham and his nephew Lot decided to separate. Lot eventually moved to the city of Sodom. It was a beautiful city back then, but it was full of injustice and unmentionable sins called sodomy, which is homosexuality. Because of this, God decided to destroy Sodom and the equally sinful neighbor city of Gomorrah. He sent angels to tell Lot what was going to happen and to get Lot and his family out of Sodom. Lot barely escaped when the fire fell from heaven and burned the cities to the ground. Verse 9. And the kings of the world who committed adultery with her and enjoyed her great luxury will mourn for her as they see the smoke rising from her charred remains. The destruction of Babylon will be worldwide news. Kings, dictators, politicians, and those who supported her will see the smoke billowing up into the air, causing them to grieve and cry. By sundown, they will see a heap of smoldering rubble. It'll remind many of what happened in 9/11. It'll be a time for the cradle of civilization to bury the coming new world order. Now, let's go to another verse here. They will stand at a distance, terrified by her great torment. They will cry out, how terrible for you, O Babylon, you great city. In a single moment, God's judgment came on you. The kings, dictators, and politicians will shake in fear. Panic will grip them. Their cry of alas, alas, finally, reveals deep anguish and terror because her destruction will come in 1 hour. A few experts suggest that 1 hour could mean a short space of time or spread over a few days, if you will, but most think it means suddenly or instant. instantaneous. That will add to the panic and terror. Now, notice that Babylon is called the mighty city. Remember that? Mighty city. Some translations say city of power. This will be the power center of Antichrist, the 10 kings, the false prophet, presidents, and prime ministers, the super center of global governance and global trade. In the near future, vigilant Christians may want to focus on the efforts to rebuild Iraq and the struggle for so-called religious freedom in that Islamic hotbed. That's going on stronger and stronger each day, and especially like in Europe and in America, parts of America, and other parts of the world. The merchants of the world will weep and mourn for her, for there is no one left to buy her goods. Now, that's kind of, nobody will be able to buy her goods at all. Purple and scarlet were worn by royalty in John's day. We talked about that a little while ago. Silk was so scarce at one time, it was actually outlawed. Citron wood was also scarce and highly sought for ornamental purposes. However, during the tribulation period, Babylon will import these cargoes frequently. These are the goods of an affluent society, a rich society, in other words. The global traders will pile them up in Babylon, but the Apostle James warned about such things when he said, "Come now, you rich, weep and howl for your miseries. They are coming upon you. Your riches are corrupted, and your garments are moth-eaten. Your gold and silver are corroded, and the corrosion will be a witness against you, and will eat you like flesh, like fire. You have heaped up treasures in the last days." In case you want to read that, that's James chapter 5, verse 1 through 3. It'll be boom time in Babylon when the billionaires head there, but it'll be bust when the ball of fire falls. God gives wealth, but he meant for it to benefit society, not to entice a few. Revelation 17:4 says, "The woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet and adorned with gold and precious stones and pearls." Verse 13. She also brought cinnamon, spice, incense, myrrh, frankincense, wine, olive oil, fine flour, wheat, cattle, sheep, horses, wagons, and bodies, that is, human slaves. Trafficking.
Rudy, here is your reminder. Daily reminder.
Alexa, stop. Let's keep an eye for the puzzle. Now, some additional products, like, that large corporations sell, will deal during the tribulation period. Like, for example, we talked about expensive perfumes, spices, food, grain, cattle, even human beings, trafficking. This is a picture of large corporations that will sell anything for a profit. It is also a picture of businessmen crying because they have lost sales. It seems almost unthinkable, actually, that we would have slavery in this modern world. Nevertheless, slavery is tragic reality in Sudan, and there is virtually no outcry from global leaders or human rights or activists around the world. The jihad, the holy war, being waged against Christians and non-Muslims in Sudan has actually caused the destruction of about 3 million people, even more. Christians and non-Muslim villages are being burned. Remember what happened in Africa about a couple months ago? The men are being destroyed, and the women and children are being sold in open slave market for sometimes as little as $10 to $15 a piece. Now, when the tsunami struck several Southeast nations in 2004, thousands of children were separated from their parents. Some news reports expressed concern that these children would be seized and sold into slavery. But if anything was ever done to stop people who deal in slaves, it did not get reported. Fake news, remember? A lot of times news agencies will cover the real news. Christians are sold as slaves in some Islamic countries. Women are sold into slavery as prostitutes in some Asian countries, even in Mexico and even in America. And there are even reports of this happening in the Caribbean and some South American countries. From their treasures, the wise men gave the baby Jesus gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. That's if you recall those gifts. Okay, let's continue. Verse 14. The fancy things you love so much are gone, they cry. All your luxuries and splendor are gone forever, never to be yours again. The global traders will acknowledge that the Babylonian dream has been destroyed. All her riches, her glory, will be gone forever. Thank you. No puzzle yet. Thank you. I'm going to keep an eye on it. Babylon has always been associated with wealth, always. It is appropriately called the kingdom of gold in Daniel chapter 2. The most famous gardens the world has ever known are called the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. They have been designated one of the seven wonders of the world. In order to make the mountain princess he married, I'm sorry, I can't read my notes. Okay. In order to make the mountain princesses he married feel at home, King Nebuchadnezzar built terraces for gardens that were 400 feet square and as high as 75 feet. Now, flowers, shrubs, and trees were planted on those terraces, and slaves worked the gardens day and night. Let me check the puzzle. No puzzle yet. Good. Verse 15. The merchants who became wealthy by selling her these things will stand at a distance, terrified by her great torment. They will weep and cry out. The businessmen who prospered by brokering deals at Babylon will not go near the burned out ruins. They will cry and grieve at a distance because they're terrified. I mean, they're scared of her judgment, right? Who wouldn't be? Some may even stand in their executive suites halfway around the world watching on television, their cell phones, their tablets, or their PCs. They'll be crying, they'll be wailing. Now, 16. How terrible for that great city. She was clothed in finest purple and scarlet linens, decked out, good so far, decked out with gold and precious stones and pearls. We have already learned that the businessmen of the world will cry because Babylon's great power will not protect her anymore. Now we learn that they will cry because her beauty and wealth will also fail to protect her. It matters not how powerful an entity is, how beautiful or how rich. If God decides it should fail, guess what? It's going to fall. It's going to fall and fail, both. Now, Jesus said, do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroys, and where thieves break in and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves do not break in and steal. That's Matthew chapter 6, verse 19 and 20. Good financial planning includes much more than large bank accounts, sound investments, and a diversified portfolio. Everyone needs to think about these things, but the only permanent investments are spiritual. Giving to the Lord's work is truly sound finance planning because it becomes legal tender in heaven. That is the most careful money management of all. No puzzle yet. Thank you. In a single moment, all the wealth of the city is gone. And all the captains of the merchant ships and their passengers and sailors and crews will stand at a distance. At a distance. There you go. Verse 7. I'm going to keep an eye on this puzzle thing. Okay. Now, the sudden destruction of such great riches in a short time will be catastrophic for many, 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 many people. First, we read that the kings, the dictators, and politicians who supported Babylon will cry, right? Then we read that the global merchants who do business with her will also cry. Now we learn that the seamen who transport her goods will also cry in the ships. Hauling the merchandise of Babylon will be big business, but in 1 hour her great wealth will be gone. Every sea pilot, every sea traveler to Babylon, all the sailors, and all who will be earning a living on the sea will stand back and mourn the loss of goods, jobs, and business. Now, let me look. No puzzle. Okay. This seems unimaginable, but planes crashing into the World Trade Center towers brought them down in 1 hour. And when Hurricane Katrina struck the Gulf Coast of the United States in 2005, the city of New Orleans and virtually all the cities and towns near the coast of Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama were damaged or destroyed. Multitudes lost everything they had in a matter of minutes. Let me check. Nothing yet. Okay. 18. They will cry out as they watch the smoke ascend, and they will say, "Where is there another city as great as this?" This cry is similar to the lament that people heard when the beautiful city of Tyre, Tyre, was destroyed for a second time. Nebuchadnezzar wiped out the original city on the mainland, so the Phoenicians rebuilt it on an island. Remember? They made it their capital and turned it into a great trading center. Alexander the Great came along and punished the ruins, destroyed them, pushed the ruins of the old city into the sea, making a causeway out of the island. His troops walked out on dry land and destroyed the rebuilt city. People compared that to the sinking of a great ship. They cried and asked, "What city is like Tyre, destroyed in the midst of the sea?" That's in Ezekiel chapter 27, verse 32. When people see the smoke of Babylon rising in the air, they're going to ask, what is like this great city? No puzzle. Thank you. Keep on checking. Keeping on checking. Okay, verse 19. And they will weep and throw dust on their heads to show their grief, and they will cry out, how terrible for that great city. The ship owners became wealthy by transporting her great wealth on the seas. In a single moment, it is all gone. This is the third time we're told Babylon will fall in 1 hour. The third time. The sudden nature of her destruction will leave the political, the business, and shipping worlds bitterly weeping, reeling, and stunned. This is a clear sign of what the love of money will do to people. When money is God and God is gone, what is left but godless grief, right? Now, some think the destruction of this great city is in just 1 hour could mean an atomic or nuclear explosion. The fact that people will not go near it is another indication of that. Keep that in mind. It's also possible that they're feeling the effect of disaster fatigue or disaster overload by this point. A malady that some physicians started talking about following the many disasters that struck around the world early this century. Now, 1/3 of the ships sinking, the sea turning to blood, and ports burning are bound to have psychological consequences for those who make their living on the sea. Let me check the puzzle. Not yet. Okay. Verse 20. Rejoice over her fate, O heaven, and people of God, and apostles and prophets, for alas, God has judged her for your sakes. This is something the Old Testament prophets prophesied, the New Testament apostles predicted, and the tribulation period saints will pray for. We should join the angels in heaven in rejoicing when God's word is fulfilled and the prayers of God's people are actually answered. Here we have a difference between God's people and the godless. One group will rejoice and sing praises of God, right? The other will grieve and mourn the loss of their God, which is money. In the end, Babylon will have brought this judgment on herself by mistreating God's people. What comes around goes around. Then a mighty angel picked up a boulder the size of a huge millstone. He threw it into the ocean and shouted, "Just like this, the great city Babylon will be thrown down with violence and will never be found again." Several times we've read about this mighty angel. Whether these will be different angels or the same angel is not really known. But here's the thing: the picture that we're trying to see here is that of a huge stone being violently hurled or thrown down into the sea, where it will disappear forever. This symbolizes a sudden, violent, and eternal destruction of future Babylon. Let me check. Nothing yet. Okay, good. Verse 22. The sound of harps, singers, flutes, and trumpets will never be heard in you again. No craftsman and no trades will ever be found in you again. The sound of the mill will never be heard in you again. Everything from entertainment to manual labor, jobs will cease. They're going to stop. There will be no more music in Babylon. No people going to work, no craftsmen doing their job. She will be silenced forever. Forever. 23. The light of a lamp will never shine in you again. The happy voices of brides and grooms will never be heard in you again. For your merchants were the greatest in the world, and you deceived the nations with your sorceries. The street lights, the lights in the malls, the shops, homes will be dark. Joyous occasions such as marriages will never be heard again. Babylon will be an utter waste. The merchants of Babylon will be great men on earth. They will use black magic, sorcery, and demonic practices to lead people astray, to get them lost. The forces of darkness will reign until God turns their lights off. Okay, puzzle. Hold on a second. Hold on a second, please. There we go. Good job. We did it. We're almost done, though. We're almost done. One more verse. 24. In your streets flowed the blood of the prophets and of God's holy people, and the blood of people slaughtered all over the world. Now, Babylon has a long history as a city of Satan. The false prophet will make his headquarters there during the last half of the tribulation period. He will worship the Antichrist and have no tolerance for the people of God. He will destroy all those who lack the mark of the beast. Babylon's destruction will be well deserved. The false prophet came with two horns like a lamb, remember? Lambs do not have horns, so we know he'll be a fake in lamb's clothing. Jesus warned that false prophets will deceive many in the last days. The winds of deceit will reach strong force during the tribulation period. Now beware. Beware of any religious leader who speaks bad of Jesus and opposes the scriptures. Any message that contradicts the Bible, no matter how sweet sounding, is not from God. Not from God. Amen. Thank you, people.